Therapy Daddies, the podcast, hosted by Itzel Jimenez, featuring Jasmine DeVasquez.
Welcome to our first Therapy Daddies podcast. This podcast is created for families who are going through different kinds of challenges in life, specifically with therapy related situations. We want to honor the whole family as they are going through these things. It's not only just moms that help support the needs of their children who are born with different disabilities or just complications at birth. We want to honor the whole family, and so Therapy Daddies was created to honor every single person who just steps in and helps during seasons like this. This is Jasmine. This is my sister, and she has an amazing story to tell. She had a kiddo, his name's Adonis, and she had a son that was born with a couple different conditions. So I'm gonna just go ahead and start asking you about your pregnancy and how that started.
Okay. Okay. So obviously we found out we were pregnant, and it was at the 18 weeks appointment that they told us he had gastroschisis via the ultrasound. Which gastroschisis is when you have your intestines outside of your body, um, and then it was not until I was 28 weeks pregnant that they were able to find the congenital diaphragmatic hernia, which is there's a hole in your diaphragm and your intestines can push up or come out through the where your belly button would be. And throughout that pregnancy, they would say that his intestines were not circulating blood flow. So, with kids who have gastroschisis, they could either be short bowel, which means they have to cut the intestines. And so they kind of thought that that's what he would have to get as soon as I gave birth. They gave him a 30% chance of surviving. And so they told me that if we wanted to terminate the pregnancy, because once I deliver, his chances were very low, and I would basically be delivering a stillbirth delivery. And so we just kept on pushing on and had, faith in God that everything will work out. And every appointment we had, it was always bad news and always the same of, do you want to terminate the pregnancy? We were like, no, we're just going to keep pushing. And I was 35 weeks pregnant when I went to the hospital because he wasn't moving no more. And I didn't feel him. And they were saying that he was starting to get an infection from my amniotic fluid. So I had to do a C section. And yeah, I mean, once that's the part of the pregnancy. Once I gave birth, then I had an emergency C-section. They took him out and they rushed him over to the hospital's ICU, where they put his intestines in a little bag and kind of had it elevated. And then, less than 24 hours, they took him to the Phoenix Children's Hospital to get surgery. And then I stayed back. Dad went with him, and I had to recover from my C-section. So Dad was with Adonis for the first week while I was in the hospital recovering.
And how long was he in the NICU?
3 months total.
3 months total. Did you experience any difficulty in the time that he was in the NICU? Any moments of just, kind of more bad news that you were kind of experiencing already?
It, it was because he did have a second surgery at that time. His intestines, because when he had his surgery after 24 hours of being born, they immediately put the intestines back inside, which probably was rushed in a sense because then his intestines were trying to fit in the little body that it wasn't growing together when he was inside of me. So it was hard for his body to get used to those intestines actually being in place. So his intestines twisted, and obviously causing issues and pain for him. So he had to get surgery to pretty much untwist the intestines. And so he did go through that. He went through not being NPO, which pretty much means like they're not allowed to have anything by mouth or eat, just like fluids, lipids, things like that to help him. And so they would let me pump my breast milk, and I would give him like a little cotton swab of a touch in his mouth of that. So that was difficult, but yeah, he just had that one surgery, and he was growing, and that's why he was there just for 3 months, and it was enough for him to come home, obviously with a feeding tube, but yeah, he was able to come home after the 3 months.
And I do remember a little bit. It was during a time where I was in PT school, so I do remember that. I mean, my mind was just like getting school done. But I know that in that time, we actually lived together while you were.
Yeah.
You had Adonis already. I can't remember.
Yeah,
Or were you
so.
pregnant of Adonis?
I think I was pregnant. I don't remember now.
I don't remember. I think it was a little bit after Adonis was born.
Yeah, I think I moved in with my mother-in-law. Once he came out of the hospital, I was with her at her house.
Yeah. And then eventually, you know, I think that when I was in PT school, I had no idea what, like, that this world even existed. And honestly, I didn't even know what PTs really did.
Same.
Like, I knew there was a general, like, thing, but I do remember that in school, for some weird reason, while you were pregnant, I was watching this documentary that someone had recommended me to watch. And I remember it was about this doctor who was working with kiddos who had diaphragmatic hernias. And he was talking about how basically he was like trialing this new method of trying to close the hernia in utero, which is when the baby is in the womb. But I think the radical thing about Adonis is that Adonis had two conditions. And if it wasn't for the other condition, which is gastroschisis, where the intestines were out of his body, then the lung wouldn't have enough space to grow normally, but because his intestines were out, it allowed for his intestines to grow at least a little bit, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's interesting because there was actually three. I think it was, they say it was like an environmental thing, but it was a coincidence that there was three other kiddos in the NICU who had just a congenital diaphragmatic hernia, not the gastroschisis, and all three of those babies did not make it. Like they were in the NICU for maybe a couple of weeks. But I remember me and my husband Jeremy, we were there and we just see them like close it and take the baby, and the family just crying, and we knew that they didn't make it. But now that you brought that up, it is interesting because his surgeon and his whole team did do a whole like an what's it called? Sorry, it's like they get together to kind of go over like a study, a research study. There you go. They did a research study on Adonis specifically, so we had a lot of forms to sign because we had to make sure his stuff is out there, which I haven't even searched up there. It's probably in Phoenix Children somewhere. The research on him, but yes, they did say that because he had the gastroschisis, and his intestines were able to flow out instead of push all those lungs in and even the heart in, that he survived. He has one full developed lung and the other one's like a little balloon, but it's functional still enough for him to obviously not even have. He has mild asthma, but not severe. So he's young.
And now Adonis is how old?
He's 7. He's gonna be 8 at the end of the year.
Yeah, that's radical. With only 30% chance survival. And I do remember there was a time where you told, and I think this is actually one of like the times in my life where I felt like we need to fix the way we approach the healthcare system. I knew that I was going into healthcare, but I wasn't sure like what my purpose was in it. But I remember one time you said, can you come with me to this appointment because they just keep telling me to abort him, and it just feels like it's overpowering almost in a way where it's like it's so negative that you just needed that support in that time. And I remember in my head I was like, even to myself, to be honest, I was just like, well, you know, let's see, you know, maybe you're just thinking it's like too negative, you know. But when I went in there, it wasn't even that she was saying to abort him. She was also saying it almost in a mad way. Like, how dare you keep this kid alive, make him suffer. but then it's like, how would he even know what he's gone through if he's not even alive yet, you know?
Exactly.
And just the way that she kind of made it very condescending, it really bothered me because, you know, yes, both you and I were young moms,
Yes.
but we love our children. And honestly, like we were talking about this yesterday, our children really like rescued us in our minds and the way that we were living because we were not living the best way. But I think that in that moment, I realized there was such a gap in healthcare that was missing like the humanity
Right.
in it. And so I wanted to just kind of ask you like what has been your learning process with navigating how healthcare providers and people who have really high titles are telling you what you should do with your life? Like how did you navigate that?
I mean, it was hard, but me and my husband, we were very active on like support groups outside, so like Facebook groups, family groups that we're going through the same thing. So we just kind of like joined those groups, and it was a community of support. And then we just did our own research, you know, like we just had to battle it ourselves and figure it out because yeah, there were doctors like that, but luckily, after I was obviously not dealing with OB doctors no more, and I went into specialties, which obviously was like his surgeon, his GI, every pulmonology. He has like over 7 specialties that he still sees today. Luckily, it's just for checkups now. But yeah, they were amazing, and I think because of them, allowed us to feel like, okay, this is not every doctor, it's not going to be every experience. And now that he's here, thankfully, now that he's here, these doctors are like, nope, let's figure it out. And also with his physical therapist, occupational therapist, feeding therapist, like they were very on making us feel like part of the journey and that they were part of our journey as well. So I think that just shifted our perspective as well and helped us move forward and have more faith because we know that these doctors actually cared about, you know, what happens with Adonis and his future.
That's great. And we're going to show a video of Adonis and basically kind of showing how he's like running around, so active. And even like when he was in the NICU, when he was such a baby. And, you know, he really has came a long way. Um, what would you say are some of the things that he's still working on? Is he doing any therapies today?
He still gets physical therapy. He's always been tight, obviously, because he was on a very high alert all the time. So he became very like tight in his body. His legs are one of his issues, so he still gets PT for that. He doesn't have. He graduated occupational. He graduated speech therapy. Right now, he still gets feeding therapy because he's been so feeding tube dependence, whether it's NG or G tube. Now he's in a G tube still, but he's cut back a lot. He went from 4 feedings of a G tube to 2 feedings now, and now he's eating by mouth. But that's the only thing that they're working on with him is just his feeding therapy, and his physical therapy, which is actually not a lot. So he's getting to that end of the tunnel, hopefully.
Stages.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And I know we're called Therapy Daddies, but in reality, you know, we acknowledge and we know that it takes a whole family to really help through these cases. And I know your husband was very, very involved with from the beginning to the end. He was always there, and like even with the therapies, he's those type of dads that we as therapists are like, he's definitely following through with his home exercise programs and like looking into it to the point that I mean we crack up and we say he's like, you know, a nurse, and he just like learns all the ways to be able to do it. And so what do you feel like, just in honor of those dads who are really out there really supporting these cases where, you know, they have kids with disabilities or not necessarily disabilities but just very complicated births? What is your kind of encouragement to those dads who are walking that life right now?
I think it's just I think it's beautiful, you know, those dads. And I feel like we see it a lot more now, which is great. Like thankfully, you know, those dads are being so active, so present in their kids' lives now and being part of their journey. Um, I think it's great, and I hope that dads continue to be on that path because I feel for kids they need both, and also as moms, like we need the support too. Like we can't carry all that on ourselves, and with the dads helping, I think it really helps. Like, you know, get through things, whether it's with us, with our child and stuff. But yeah, I think it's very important dads be involved in that because it's their child too, so they're going just as through a lot of stuff as us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like he's done a great job of just kind of being strong about everything, and even just like the family support that he has and everything like that. And Adonis really looks up to him and stuff like that. So I think in general, it's something that we appreciate in the world of therapy, is knowing that there are parents who are out there who are very supportive. And for the ones who don't have that support, like how you said, those mommy groups or just those community groups, which is essentially what we're trying to build here with Therapy Daddies, is kind of a streamlined way of advocating for, hey, let's come together and be a community, because the world needs it. It's really hard to go through tough times on your own. And I mean, in that season, it was a tough time for you, but now that you're out of it, what are your thoughts, like looking back?
I feel like it never stops. And I feel like if you were part of that or are in the field of it, you should never stop researching. I spent all my last 2 years of college doing research on women's health, and that's my last essay for my before I graduated was the lack of resources for women in the OB and after postpartum and just in women's health. And I think that's what lacks. But it's interesting because when I was looking at all these research reports were done by women doctors. And it's kind of like sad to see that, like, it's the women standing for the women, but sometimes we do need to be each other's guide. And I feel like if we can support and help one way, whether it's joining a support group or, seeing a mom who is going through stuff, I feel like that's the one thing I like to connect to. Like, when I meet other moms who have kids in the NICU or in therapy, like, I don't know why I just grasp to them because I know what they're going through. So I think just being like each other's support system, because we're what we have, we just have each other and only we can understand what we're going through. But I think as like physicians or physical therapists, even like you work with the kids, so you know the struggles, and just being a support for one each other can make such a difference in that mom's life, or even our lives, or as a provider's life, like making that connection with them.
Right, that deeper connection. And we're kind of in a world where career and finances and living and all these natural things that just have to happen are really like in the forefront of what we're thinking about, as employees, as providers. But I think one of the things that I really love to advocate about is like, don't lose connection as to why you do what you do.
Right.
Because there are real people back there. There's the need for consistency. There's a need for just people who can go into the trenches. That's what I say. I'm like, working with families, it's not easy. You have a variety of different types, but not everyone has the heart to go into a trench and walk with a family through these hard times. So what would you say is like something that you would give to providers nowadays who are going into the homes of families and seeing them in their brokenness, seeing them in those seasons of like, they're getting these negative reports and they're receiving all this information. What kind of encouragement or advice would you say from a mom that experienced that kind of intrusion in your life during that time?
Well, I feel like maybe for the parent too, as hard as it is for us, because it might feel like embarrassing. Because I think we were living together after Adonis was born, actually. Because now that I remember, we had that nurse come in all the time to change his little patch that he has right here for his central lines. But it felt embarrassing because like we're roommates and we have a kid there. But like the nurse never made us feel uncomfortable about it. Yeah,
that's true. I do remember. Like, she always walked in.
She was so funny.
And she acted like it was the most normal thing. And it's true. We weren't just living together. We were kind of like ghetto living together. Like, we didn't have a mattress. We didn't have a mattress. Yeah. We didn't have a bed frame. And our bed, or at least I didn't. You had the bed frame. And my mattress was on the ground. And we were talking about this, how like, we were so raunchy, but we had like, I had all my son's like artwork like because I couldn't afford like picture frames. So I just taped them on the
We did
wall.
an art gallery.
And then we had like a little kid corner with like a little raunchy
We
toys.
made it work. We made it work. Yeah.
And, you know, so yeah, she definitely, I do remember that. She would come in.
Like she was at her home.
Like she was at her home.
Yeah.
Which is something that I picked up on, and I love to teach the therapists that I train. I'm like, just go in there, pretend like it's your house, and pretend like you know that person all your life, and just sit there and just be comfortable, like
make them feel
it.
comfortable. That's what the thing is. Like, don't make them. I guess like you can be like the I don't know how to explain it. Just like make them feel like, you know what, that's not even the issue. Like, make it seem like so normal to you. Like, you walk in, who cares if you walk into a dirty home? Because obviously as moms are like, you know, busy life, like it's gonna be dirty. But like walk in like, okay, hey, hi, how are you? Like that doesn't bother you, because I think them seeing like, oh, it doesn't bother them, like it must not be that bad, and just focus on like what you're there to do, and just make it about that. You know, don't focus on this, or I don't know, just make them feel comfortable, you know, even if you're not comfortable, but just pretend you're comfortable. I think that goes a long way, you know.
It's a very valuable thing, because even in that time, like we lived in Arizona, and it gets so friggin' hot, and but it's radical, because you think like if it wasn't for that one nurse, you know, particularly, who is going into our apartment complex, it's like you have to find the apartment, go up the stairs with all the equipment, and all just to do a change, right?
Yeah, like
of dressing. And it's like, to some people who are providers, you'll be like, oh, who cares? Like, let me go find a job where it's like less work to do. But it's like, no, we need people who do the hard things in life. We can't always choose the easiest, because then there's people on the other end who are not going to receive that high quality care. And it's important all around. So I think your story just kind of talks about that a lot. So kind of tell me a little bit of what Adonis is like doing now. What is he into?
Yeah, I mean, he's our little science boy. It's funny because he was nonverbal till he was like almost 4. Me and my husband were just looking at pictures when we were watching videos. I'm like, oh my gosh, he was like nearly 4 when he started his first word. But it's so funny because his first words were the solar system planets.
No way.
Yeah, he learned the planets before he learned like his name and like ABCs and stuff like that. Yeah, he would just say Mars, Jupiter, and all that stuff. But that hasn't left. He's still a little nerd at heart, which is so crazy because he's so smart.
Which is true, because he actually knows like other languages. He's learned like
Italian. Spanish actually with my mom now. And he's just so smart.
Intelligent.
He loves anything that has to do with science and like learning and experiencing. And I hope, you know, he becomes what he wants to be. He wants to be a little scientist that is focused on sea animals. So he might join San Diego.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And tell me about kind of like how he got into the school system. How does that look like? Because I think sometimes parents, at least for, you know, my line of work, they will say, I don't know what happens after early intervention or something. And they're going into the school systems, they don't know what to expect. Kind of talk about your process about.
I think, well, first and foremost, you know, we're their advocates. Like I said, my son didn't speak till he was 4. So I had to speak for him, and I still speak for him. So we just had to be his advocate, do our research, and I just got him to preschool. Luckily, there was like the program of, I think it had to do with our insurance. It's something that our state provided. So luckily the preschool was covered through his IEP program, which is getting him help still. While he's at school, he still gets like therapies, whether it's speech, PT. He still gets PT. Oh no, he gets OT at school right now. But when he started preschool, it was obviously scary because he didn't talk really. But he started preschool at 3 with an IEP. And again, luckily he had a preschool teacher who was amazing and worked with a bunch of kids with disabilities or just delays. And it's funny because as soon as he started preschool, he just started yapping. And now he still talks a lot. We can't get him to stop talking. But yeah, I think that really helps. Even till this day, he still gets the IEP program, which just helps him with, like, you know, whatever they're struggling with. He gets it for his OT. And I believe that's about it now because he's doing good with all the other stuff. Like I said, he already graduated, but there's a lot of support in the school system more than parents think there is. You just have to reach out and figure that out. Yeah.
That's good. And I know that he never needed to use equipment, nothing like that at school, right? No adaptations or anything. No. Okay. Yeah, I know he's thriving. He's around a bunch of other kids, and he talks about having his friends, and stuff like that. And I know you've gone on a couple of field trips with him.
Oh yeah.
And he just loves it. He loves life. I think back to like a moment that was pretty insane that I remember. There was a time where I remember he wasn't producing like a specific immunoglobulin. A globulin. Immunoglobulin. God.
Yeah.
But it was like the IgGH or IgH.
Yes, the white blood cell count. Yeah.
And his intestine wasn't producing it at some point, right?
Yeah.
And talk about that and how there was that moment of like, honestly, just basically a miracle that happened.
Yeah, I mean, it was scary because obviously a lot of people know, like, you don't produce white blood cells, you have an immune deficiency. He does have an immune deficiency still, but it's scary because we were having to go with oncologists and the possibility of, like, you know, the cancer route, which hope, you know, it never got to that point. But yeah, since he wasn't developing the white blood count, his body would get really sick. And I guess we didn't mention it, but after the NICU, he was in and out of the hospital for the first 2 years of his life. We spent more time in the hospital than we spent outside. We were there every 2 months, and he had, throughout that 2 years of his life, he had 6 total surgeries. He had different infections because, like I said, he had a central line. His body was rejecting it, and his veins were pretty much like they weren't functional no more. And so they had to move the central line every place he got, and it would just get bad and bad. And he got infections to the point where he almost also like didn't make it in the ICU. And it wasn't until I pretty much said, which was like I guess 2 miracles. I just said pull that central line out if his body's gonna be able to survive without that. The central line was pretty much to produce like all the things he was lacking, basically everything that he was lacking. And so I was just like, I know this is like what's helping him in a sense keep him alive and healthy and strive, but it's doing more damage than good. So for me, dad just said, you know, take it off. And if it's God's will, if he, you know, makes it, and if it doesn't, then I'd rather him not suffer. And so as soon as I took that off, it's so crazy because I was also 9 months pregnant already with my second child at a time. So I was like, no, let's just pull it out, no more central lines. And it wasn't like until months after that, like we went, like I said, he's a specialist. They do the blood count again, they do all the testing and stuff, and he never, thankfully, got sick again to the point where he needed to be admitted. He started producing the white blood cells to at least help him. It's not as a high or a normal rate as like me and you or a normal person, but it's enough for him to be fine without all these tubes everywhere in his body. So yeah, I mean, it was crazy because it's just like letting go of something that was supposed to be producing that for him and me giving it up to just let his body naturally do it. But I know we had a lot of support, a lot of prayers. And yeah, it was like a double miracle because like we, you know, he survived. He hasn't been in the hospital since, and his body's just been producing what it needs to produce to just be okay, you know.
Yeah. That's, I mean, it's incredible just to hear it. Like, it's insane to see things that are not supposed to happen. And I feel like that is honestly, that just drives me. I'm so addicted to seeing those things because it's important to know that, like, there's always going to be someone with an opinion. There's always going to be someone who says, you know, research says this, it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, those things are probably more than often more common and yes, true than not. But there are those outliers in life, and we don't know which they are. And so for me, it's always like, we got to remember that there's times where things can happen that don't make sense. And clearly something like that happened to you, because not only was your kiddo born with 30% chance survival rate, but he also is already 8 years old, thriving. And you know, he went through all these crazy processes where I know your medical team was telling you, like, no, this is the best route, this is the best route. But in the end, you kind of anchored yourself to what your mom gut
Yeah.
instinct said, as well as obviously your husband's. But I think there's something to say about even biology wise, like we are our kids have our chromosomes.
Right.
Like we are so connected, deeper than I
Mhm.
think most people will even say.
Yeah.
To the point that I think we can sense when things are
Right.
not okay or we should take a route. So do you feel like a lot of your time there you kind of leaned in on that instinct, that mother instinct?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you said, we know our child best, and I would always say at that time because I wasn't, as close to God as thankfully we are now, but at the time I would just say, I don't know, like something told me, something felt like I felt it in my body or in my brain. I just said like the push of like say no to this or fight for this. I've always been a mama bear anyways, and they literally had to put like a little warning on his folder for me because I've always been like spoke out for him. But
What did they say on the folder?
I saw it one time. It was a red tag.
What did it say?
It's just I don't forget what it said.
Said Mama Bear, be careful.
Yeah, it just says like make sure confirm with mom first. Talk to mom first. It's like a big red tag right there, like don't, before you do absolutely like even giving water, ask mom first.
Yes.
Yeah, because I was very like I said, we have to be advocates, we got to speak for our kids. And I think a lot of parents think because yeah, like they're physician, like they know what's best. And I guess it's like some people are just not educated about it, and that's okay to not be educated, but make sure you ask questions and do the research too, because at the end of the day, like this life is depending on you, in a sense. But yeah, I mean, it was a lot of gut feelings, which now I understand. Like, no, this was God guiding me and telling me, like, do this. Like, I'm speaking through you, so like, do it and stuff. But yeah, that's just what it was. It's just at the moment's gut feelings, but thank God, like, yeah, God spoke through me that time that I was like able to make that jump. Like, no, like, I don't want to do that. And yeah, they did look at me kind of crazy. Like, you want your child to die? I'm like, no, like, that's not gonna happen. So.
And a lot of time, the people that look crazy are onto something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I always talk to people about like those mama bears. Like when we enter a home and we have those moms, it's like anger is a secondary emotion, and a lot of times it's stemming from fear. It's stemming from all these things. So it's like we got to push through that initial phase because eventually you learn to trust your providers, right? And you learn to do that. It's just at the beginning you have so many people giving you opinions.
Yes.
It feels like it's all over you, you know?
Yeah.
But I think something else important to state is that obviously we both didn't grow up knowing God, you know?
Yeah.
We grew up like in a home where, we had a very loving family, I would say, but our dad was an alcoholic, but he's a changed man now. So, Dad, if you're watching this, you're changed, okay? But honestly, just kind of growing up without that kind of like anchor, I think it's just something that a lot of families end up finding. Sometimes it's like that anchor to their faith. And because there's things that just don't make sense, that you have to look up to a higher power.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think it's actually a radical moment because since we both didn't grow up in that environment, and I think this is the first time that we're actually like together where we're in line with our faith.
Yeah.
Because we both went different routes, in life. Yeah. And in the end, God put us back together, and we're both, believe in God. And so that's a radical thing. But I think it's an amazing story for Adonis. What is something that you can share with families who are going through this today as an encouragement?
Yeah, I would just say don't give up. Like every time you feel, because it's going to feel heavy. It's going to feel like a bunch of bricks are just falling on you. And you have to be the one to figure out how to get out of that. But I would say, have faith in God. Pray to God, ask God. Like, don't be scared to ask for help. And if, not ready to speak to God, like, speak to someone about it because you definitely need support through that. And never be afraid to ask for help, whether it's with somebody, with God, we have to use each other as humans to, to be there to be there for one another, have that support, have that community, because I promise someone is going to be there to talk to you. It's funny because we had like one of the physical therapists from the NICU. We were there for surgery for Adonis, and we were at the little cafeteria. But she was the one that happened to be at the cafeteria at the same time, and I didn't even have to say a word. She just knew and hugged me, just crazy. Yeah. We just have to be like the support of one another.
Like she knew that you were going through something?
I think because she had, like I said, she was his PT for the NICU. So she knew that he had a lot of complications, and like we were already out of the NICU, but we were back there, and it was like 6 in the morning. So like, who was there at 6 in the morning if it's not surgery or something like that? And I think she just knew like he was going through a surgery, and she just saw me and she just hugged me.
And she just hugged you. So just that act of kindness and that act of like selflessness from someone to another. And I think that's what the world needs nowadays.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us are so focused on us that we forget like life is so boring if we're not there to help one another. It's like, what's the purpose of fulfilling our needs when there's so much people out there that we can pour into? So that's...
Or like how we were talking about this yesterday too, like every time we feel like we're going through something horrible, like just know someone might be going through even worse. You know, and they might need us at that time. Well, you know, we might need somebody, but they might need it a little bit more.
Yeah. And it's true. I mean, we recently took a trip to Mexico, and we learned that the healthcare system out there is nothing compared to what we have here.
Yeah, that made me super grateful.
It made me grateful too. It made me realize that, oh my gosh,
we're complaining about something
a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that was crazy to hear. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's true. Like we think we have it so. I mean, we might at the moment we are not to belittle what we are going through, but there definitely is people who have to go through the same thing as us or worse and have less support and resources than us. So yeah, I think it's just a different outlook.
Yeah, we had a couple of friends that were talking about giving delivery to their baby, and they have to all be in the same room with a bunch of other moms, and they're not allowed to focus on the mom. They're only allowed to focus on the baby being delivered. And they kind of, I think about it like, you know, a farm. Like they just have all these little cows delivering babies. Yeah. No offense, but you know, it's like that. I mean, sometimes as a mom, we feel like cows, like especially when we're like trying to pump.
Yeah, that's true.
And like, there's no milk coming out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's crazy, but it made me think about that part.
Yeah, that's true.
We're very lucky here. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming to San Diego. And I hope that this helps a lot of parents out there who are going through the same thing. And it also helps highlight that, you know, it even reminds me that like this, I'm very fortunate to also have experienced it within my own family. Yeah. To be able to have some perspective. And there might be people out there that are like, well, I've never experienced this. It's never happened in my home or even in my family's life. No, but we all have experienced grief. We've all experienced loss, disappointment, and we know what that feels like, and we know what it feels like to have someone come in and help and lift us up. Yeah. And so I would just say, you know, hopefully if anyone is listening to this, that you know that you're not alone. There's a lot of people who go through similar things or even just similar emotions, and we can get through it together. So yeah. Okay.
Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
Brought to you by Redemption Physical Therapy.